I'm going to be meeting with Olivia Kung, co-founder of Wellington Legal. Olivia is an experienced litigation lawyer, and we will be discussing the importance of hiring a lawyer when starting a business. So Olivia, you started your own law firm about 3 years ago after a very successful career. Could you share with us a bit more about this journey?
I actually started practicing law in the UK, so I'm a qualified UK lawyer. I came back to Hong Kong approximately 10 years ago, and I was very lucky because I met one of my best mentors, and I worked for him, and he gave me lots of opportunities to go out to market myself, to network. He taught me how to get clients, etc. We have got a law firm that's got 4 partners, and we have got over 20-something staff. So,
wow,
yes.
Wonderful. How hiring a lawyer at the very start of your business is a really important thing. Through your career, you come across that you think, entrepreneurs who are just starting should really pay attention to.
Because when you first start a business, you won't think about lawyer's fee as part of the budget. I think a lot of people won't put that down. But this is something really worth putting down. The amount of money you spend initially to instruct lawyers to draft all the contracts, in fact, compared to actually go into litigation in the future, will be minimal. So it's a bit like buying insurance, same thing.
Absolutely.
No one wants to buy insurance because they always think everything will be fine,
exactly.
Nothing will go wrong.
Is, sort of DIY, agreement, contracts. I think all of us have done something like this at some point. What's your opinion on this?
My recommendation is do not do that. The reason being, a lot of people think, oh, it's such a waste of time to get a lawyer to draft all these documents. I can do it myself. And as a litigator, my job is to basically argue for people when things goes wrong. And normally, all these cases come to my table are those ones where they decided to just have oral agreements. The most typical kind of disputes is shareholders disputes. This is something not many people would think about. Is shareholders agreement is extremely important to do. And also employment contract, and you need the experts to do this for you because it will reduce the chance of things going to go wrong in the future. Or even if things do go wrong, at least you know what you guys have agreed in the first place. So yes.
Exactly.
It's really not worth it.
Can you share with us maybe a concrete example of what happened? Let's say if an agreement has been only agreed orally and nothing has been put in written.
If that happens, basically the burden of proof is on the plaintiff. So that person has to prove to the court that they had an oral agreement in the first place. So it would be my words against your words.
WhatsApp doesn't work, right?
It works, but it takes a lot of convincing to the court. This kind of litigation, the chance of success will be lower than one where there is a proper agreement in writing done by lawyers. And also, for example, there are cases where I have actually encountered a case where a gentleman actually copied a shareholders agreement from a accountancy firm, just a template. And when I looked at it, I thought, okay, so there is an agreement here. So I started asking that gentleman, I said, so you guys have agreed this. And he said, no, we didn't. And so I said, how come? And I said, but it's what it says on the agreement. He said, oh, I'm so sorry. I just got it as a template from my friend. And we haven't deleted that few sentences. And I said, right, so but now that is your agreement. And he said, that's not a good idea. So that's kind of an example of what happens if
and it's pretty hard to go back to redo everything anyway.
Because it's already, obviously when a case comes to my table, it's already in dispute. So they're already arguing who is right, who is wrong. I keep telling people to instruct lawyers to put their agreements into writing so that it won't end up on my desk.
Absolutely. So first few things an entrepreneur should look at is picking the company structure. What recommendations would you have for them?
There are different kinds of company structures. For example, sole proprietorship, partnerships, limited companies, and public listed companies. They will have to decide how they want to structure the company. For example, for our industry, law firms, we have to use partnership. We have no choice. It's the regulations. But other kind of businesses, they should have a choice. So the majority of people would pick limited companies because of the liability issues. And also, apart from that, another thing that entrepreneurs should consider is where to start the business in the first place. In other words, jurisdictions. Do you start in Hong Kong? Do you start in Singapore? Started in United Kingdom? Where? You need to consider the tax issues. You need to consider how far it is and how complicated it is to start a company in different countries. So these are things you need to think about before jumping into the decision.
Another thing that I think is quite important to mention is about corporate compliance. When do you think is a good time for an entrepreneur to actually start running one?
From the beginning. Don't wait. Compliance is actually two sides. One is external compliance, one is internal compliance. For external compliance, for example, for SFC, for Law Society, for all these authorities, these are crucial. If you don't do them properly, the company will be in trouble. So that's external. Internal compliance is also very important. This is something I noticed lots of people not bothered to do. For example, employment handbook. How many companies has actually got that? These are things that are actually quite important because you let the employee know what they can or cannot do and what's the company's policy. These are things that can eliminate risks in the future. So, yes.
So on top of any normal contract, it's really important to have that handbook.
Yes, it's for the internal management. I mean, everyone needs to know where they stand.
And would you say even someone with, let's say, just one or two staff should do it?
Well, you don't have to write like a handbook that's like a yellow pages that big, but at least you let your staff know what they can do, what they can't do, what's the company policy on certain things. For example, like taking annual leave or taking more days than they were allowed to take, and etc. etc. All these things. Another
important thing to do is, trademark, patent, or website disclaimers. When do you think? Is it something an entrepreneur should do at the very beginning as well, when they're just launching their website, for example?
Yes, this is another thing where people will think, I'll do it later. But don't do it later, do it now. Especially trademarks. It's extremely important that you need to file your trademarks from the beginning. And also patents. I mean, if you don't register your patent, that people will copy, and by the time you find out, and that will be too late. Because all these IP issues in Hong Kong in particular is who first come first serve. So it's a race. Who file it first. So if you don't do it now, then you're basically allowing people, your competitors, to file it before you. So this is something I strongly advise people to do. And website, again, I mean, these days the majority of companies, they have websites. So you need to have disclaimers and all sorts of things on it to protect yourself. And especially those websites that's got forums or apps, or where people can have chats on it. These kind of apps or websites in particular need to have a lot of legal protection.
What would you recommend as well to an entrepreneur in terms of looking into licensing?
A lot of companies, for example, finance companies, they're regulated by, for example, SFC. For partnerships like law firms and accountancy firms, etc., they are also regulated. So it depends on the industries to start off with. And for example, like restaurants or bars, obviously they will need to be aware of their license, for example, liquor license, the food license. So the different industries have got different compliance issues that they need to think about, and these are very important things to think about.
Can't agree with you more. So when an entrepreneur is actually taking the business, expanding overseas and actually raise funding, what role a lawyer can play at that stage?
Because we are in the industry and we do have networks with lawyers from different countries who are members, and we meet annually to know each other, and also we try to work together in different cases. By doing so, we know lawyers from in other jurisdictions, which we can then help locals to find lawyers in other jurisdictions to help them as well. So that's why this is one of the issues that people may not think about, is that lawyers will know lawyers in other places as well.
To make a good recommendation, and so you don't have to struggle to go yourself look for someone. I think it's important that you're mentioning that you have a trusted network.
Yes.
That your clients can tap in. And I really think this advice is good for anyone who thinks, you're just starting and you will do that later. No, it's actually really important to, for the sake of the company, but the sake of obviously your success down the line.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Olivia, for sharing all these great tips with us. We hope that you learn a lot, and we look forward to see you again.
Hope you enjoyed this episode brought by our corporate partner Hobbs, a premium women's fashion brand. If you want to join us, just visit few.community and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done that already.